Thank you very much to our moderator, Simona, who is always very persistent, and thank you for your persistence to my honored colleagues on the panel, to the organizers. I thank you, and I will speak honestly to you. I feel that so many important things have been said till now that I put aside what I had thought of saying and want to share with you honestly that I feel that we could have been meeting in the 80s and the 90s and saying the same things. And maybe we're not totally looking around and seeing really what's going on. We're talking about human rights and human dignity and enlightenment and modernity and pluralism and inclusivism and all good values, and there's not one word here which has been said which I for sure could not sign. But there is a world around us which is changing and which somewhat we're not relating to. And we have to, if we're not relating to this, we're going to lose it. And what has happened here in Europe and what is happening in the Middle East and Africa and many places is that more and more people feel estranged to these values, which we all adhere to. And that we somehow should ask ourselves, well, what do we do about it? And this estrangement doesn't mean that the values are not good values and right values. God forbid. Doesn't mean that we should put the values aside. But if we don't take this seriously and just go on as if nothing has happened, then we're losing out, as we've seen so many times. And there we have to relate, I believe, not only to issues which of course are important, of the insecurity and the poverty, but we have to relate to what is the issue here of our meeting here, also to the issue of religion. Religion is the biggest NGO in the world, whether we like it or not. And the most influential power. And it's true that we can all quote the best of practices and the best of quotes and so on to religion, but those are not the quotes which are always quoted in the places where religion is taught. And we can always say that religion is not the problem, but it's the misinterpretations. But what then do we do about the misinterpretations? Where are we? And if we don't start to take this seriously, then the world is looking like it's looking today. There has never, ever, at any point of history, been more hatred, more refugees as a result of this hatred in the world. No point of history has had more hatred, more refugees than there are today as a result of this hatred, which stems from using all the things which we know that are being used, but also using very much religion. And if we look at all the different conflicts, we can see it. So what do we do about it? Not what should we do about it, but what are we doing about it? Not what do we put in a resolution, but what do we practice? What are our best practices? And we see what's going on in Europe and in Africa. Or is this the direction? We see all the politicians now, what's going on in France, what's going on in, where I originally came from was Scandinavia. All the politicians from all different parties, they're all going to the extremes because they have to fight terrorism. What is fighting terrorism? Making all kinds of rules so that Muslims can't be Muslims and Jews can't be Jews? Is that fighting terrorism? It's encouraging terrorism. It's not freedom. It's not freedom to religion, freedom from religion. Is that the way to do it? Burkini, forbidding burkinis in France. Is that the way to do it? Is that going to fight terrorism? It's going to maybe get you more votes in the elections. Well, that's the problem. It's a problem all over. So I want to just share with you in the minutes I have some of our best practices. We've worked intensely in the Holy Land with the difficult people, not the easy people. Not the people who spoke like the wonderful talk we heard before by Sheikh Al-Yacobi. He wouldn't be admitted to our talks in the Holy Land. We only talk to the extremists, not to people like you. You speak too wonderfully. We only speak to the extremists. People like me wouldn't be admitted either. We can speak to each other, we find the common language. But we speak to the difficult people. What Ambassador Alfaro mentioned in one sentence in the opening panel, we had a major miracle happened in Spain last week. We got together the extremists, the mainstream extremists. There are other extremists who we're isolating. But the people who have been really, really difficult from both sides, from the Palestinian side, from all the parties of the Palestinians, including those who were originally in the Islamic Jihad and people from the Hamas and people from the Israeli side who were absolutely against any kind of peace agreements, and from leading from the settler movements and so on. To get them to sit together, and for the first time we've been doing it secretly now over years, but to get them photographed publicly and to sign publicly on a statement, on an action plan, which we're now going to do with hundreds and hundreds of young rabbis and young Islamists together who are committed to change our reality and to take responsibility for there not to be more bloodshed, and for urging the political leaders to do what they're not doing, to make a political agreement, and to take responsibility, not only not to make religious war, but to introduce a new concept which has never been, to have religious peace in the front line. We're working with Iraqi leaders. I remember I met with one of the greatest of the Sunni leaders in Iraq. And he said to me, I've been 25 years the leader of the Sunnis in Iraq. I've never heard such a concept in my life. I've heard about jihad, I've heard about religious peace. And one of my Muslim colleagues, a great Islamist decision maker, he said to him, what do you mean? What did Salah ad-Din, after having wars, he made a religious peace in Ramla. He signed a religious peace. There are so many presidencies in Muslim tradition as there are in Jewish tradition. And we base ourselves on religious traditions, and we can do it. And we're doing it now, practicing it. Last year was Yom Kippur and Eid al-Adha on the same day. And the head of the police in Jerusalem came to me and he said to me, we have warnings that there's going to be terrible bloodshed. It was at the beginning of a new intifada, and it's going to be terrible bloodshed on this day. So I said, what are you coming to me? You're the head of the police. You do something about it. He said, but you have all your friends on Al-Aqsa and so on. Go and talk to them and talk to all your friends. Okay, so I did. I went and talked to my friends. And the most extreme of the Muslim clergies, of the former Mufti, who is the most extreme, I went to him. I said, you want this to be a bloodbath? He said, no, no, God forbid, Allah forbid. He wrote a fatwa, very strong fatwa. He said, to celebrate our holiday is a very important thing, but because of the Jews celebrating Yom Kippur, we should tone down the celebration this year. He wrote this fatwa. It was signed by 64 of the leading Muslim leaders. It was printed in all the Palestinian press. I went to the chief rabbis. They all signed an equal thing. They said when the Muslims are celebrating, it's not to disturb the Jewish Yom Kippur. And it went to all the synagogues. The result of this was that no stone was thrown. There was no disturbances. The head of police came to me. He said, we had now 4 days of quiet. Can't you do this 365 days a year? I said, yes, we can. We can do it. But this demands that we work intensely with all the means we have to change this atmosphere of hatred and fear. And every time that there is a bomb and every time this gets all the headlines. Do you think that the peace summit last week got the headlines? No. If somebody had threatened somebody, that would have got all the headlines. It was a story in the religious press and so on. It was a sensation. It was a miracle that you could get the extremists from the two sides to sit together. In the Arab newspapers, the story was broad, all the pictures were nice and this, but this is really a sensation. We have to work with all the means in order, both in the Middle East and all over the world, because this is a time when people are insecure, the young people are insecure, where the media cultivates the hatreds and the splitting up. We need to find a way of combining the identity of religion, the persuasion of people to their identity with all the beautiful values of human rights, human dignity, democracy, peace, and dignity. We need to, that people will see this as a conflict, but we need to find the way, and it's very, very hard work, and we need to invest in this just as much as being invested in building walls between people. To make these walls come tumbling down, we need to invest major, major means. The governments who are sitting here and who are represented, look at the European Union and the governments who are sitting here. Look at the budgets, how much you're investing in making war and how much you're investing in these efforts. And if we can balance these investments a little, then we'll make a much better world. Thank you very much.